Hello my friends, this past weekend I got a ton of messages asking for my thoughts on the latest Spring Summer 2023 Hermes bags which were just introduced in Paris during Fashion Week, and I thought why not dedicate an entire video talking about these new bags because some of them are quite interesting. Now I do have to say this, I don't know much more about these bags than you do, but that doesn't mean I can share with you my experience with the brand as a whole based on those, what I think we can expect to see from these bags and my first impressions, because some of them I quite like while others not so much, including a new take on the Kelly bag. So without further ado, if you'd like to hear everything that I have to say about these new bags that are allegedly being introduced for 2023, which, knowing Hermes, these probably won't be on shelves until 2025. But if you'd like to hear everything that I have to say, then make sure to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe down below if you haven't done so yet, and keep on watching. I'm sorry guys, but if you notice me blinking uncontrollably in this video, there is something stuck in my eye, which is really annoying, and I cannot get it out. But without further ado, let's get into talking about some of the bags that were shown on the runway, and then if we have time at the end, I also want to share with you some of the bags that were introduced during the press event afterwards, which were not technically runway pieces, because a fellow YouTuber friend of mine was kind enough to let me share some of her pictures. So if we have time at the end, we'll also talk about those. If we don't, I'll definitely do a dedicated video on those as well, because there is plenty to chat about. But first things first, let's talk about some of the runway pieces. And I wanted to start with this new hobo bag, which is this kind of generic hobo bag shape, obviously with an Hermes twist. And this isn't actually the first time that Hermes does a hobo bag like this. The first bag that came to mind was a bag that I believe was called the Gao bag, which at this point is obviously discontinued. And then there was also another bag that starts with an M that was a similar shape, but I think this is more similar to the Gao bag, which I know was incredibly popular. And while this particular bag isn't my cup of tea, I very much appreciate the design, the aesthetic, the little Hermes touch, like the pocket on the outside, and also the Kelly-inspired key hook, which if you look really close, you can see that the hook is the same that you get with your Hermes straps, which I think is quite unique. I remember back in the day when I was trying to find a longer strap for my mini Kelly before I knew that you could actually have one custom made, I remember that it was almost impossible to find a hook that was comparable to the one that Hermes uses, so it's kind of their signature hook design at this point. So I appreciate the fact that they're also utilizing it on one of their bags in this fashion. Obviously you could put your keys on there, although you would probably want to be careful with attaching sharp keys on the front of your bag, but in theory you could. You could also attach something like a little pouch that you want easy access to onto the front of the bag, which I appreciate the functionality element of this, but let's be honest, at the end of the day, it is a design feature which goes really well with Hermes' ethos of creating these elevated, really elaborate pieces that do have functionality at their core. And speaking of functionality, this bag also features an oversized zip pocket, which, I mean, who doesn't love a bag with a pocket on it? So if you're all about user-friendly bags, this is definitely one that you want to put on your radar. And then the bag also has this wide, thick strap, which is actually adjustable, and it's adjustable with this incredible oversized metal buckle, which reminds me of some of the men's belts that Hermes does, which are obviously rooted in their equestrian heritage. I mean, this bag to me is kind of perfection. It isn't one that personally I feel would suit me, but if you love a hobo style bag, if it's a bag shape that suits you, I mean, you love this. To me, it seems, based on the pictures, although it's hard to tell, but to me it seems that it's going to be available in 2 different sizes. And then it was shown on the runway. The reason I'm looking down is because I'm looking at the pictures, but on the runway it was shown in a really traditional, more structured saddle leather, also in a mixture of canvas and leather, which is something that they also did for the Gao bags at one point. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And then it was also shown in a softer green skin, something along the lines of Togo, which I have to admit is my favorite. And I'm not even a hobo kind of guy, but if you are, this is definitely something that you want to slowly put on your wish list. After a strong start, this next bag I am not the biggest fan of. All I'm going to say is that what I scribbled onto this picture is champagne holder. That's what this bag reminded me of. But Hermes showed this cylindrical bag, I guess we could call it, or bucket. As I said, it reminds me of a champagne cooler or one of those little jackets that some more expensive champagnes come with. But I really think that it is going to have some sort of an equestrian inspiration to it. I think that's going to be their storyline for the season, just based on the shoulder strap. Because if you have a really close look at this bag, you can tell that the bag itself is made of leather, but the strap is made of canvas. And the hook on the canvas is really, really similar to the hook, if not the exact same, as the hook that comes with my beloved grooming bag. And then just to make matters worse, the bag was accessorized with this feather foxtail inspired duster, I'm just going to call it, which is made of ostrich feather. Now, Hermes is not foreign to using feathers on their bags, but I think in the past they mainly used chicken feathers or rooster feathers. I'm not exactly sure what the proper term is for them. I personally have never seen them use ostrich feathers, which I'm glad I had never seen them do this because I just don't think it goes with the brand's aesthetic. Not that I am the judge of what goes and doesn't go with Hermes' aesthetic, but to me it's just not what I associate with the brand. To me this is a little bit more, it just makes this bag feel like something you'd wear at your costume party rather than something that is truly rooted in the brand's heritage. Now I'm sure that they're going to have an entire storyline that goes with this bag, but it's going to be a hard sell in my personal opinion. I am just not a big feather person. Unless you're going to a Gatsby party, I don't think that feathers belong on a bag, especially not on a bag like this that is so stripped down and has more of a utilitarian feel to it. So personally, the bag itself, I mean, don't get me wrong, the bag isn't my favorite, but I think on its own, there is something you could do with it. I think it could be styled in so many fun ways. But with that feather, foxtail, duster detail, or whatever you want to call it, I just think it makes this bag and this look kind of feel incohesive. And going from a Gatsby party straight into trick or treating, there is a full on bucket that is covered in ostrich feathers, which again is not a brand new design from Hermes. It reminds me of a bag that they did a few years ago, which I think was called, it was something a plume. It's definitely not the plume bag because that's completely different from this. But there was a bag that was covered. I think they did two different colorways of it. They did one that was made of colorful rooster feathers, and then there was another colorway where it wasn't covered in feathers. I mean, it was covered in feathers, but it wasn't as dimensional as the previous colorway. I think I just have to put in some pictures for you guys to see. I think that might be the best way to do it because they're kind of hard to explain. I personally would never consider either one of those bags, but I remember that they were unbelievably popular among Hermes collectors. And this is kind of a similar shape. I have no idea if this bag will ever be put into mass production. I mean, Hermes' version of mass production. I think it might just be one of those runway pieces that they never actually send into production, which, I mean, I wouldn't be upset about because unless you're going trick-or-treating or you're going on an Easter egg hunt, this I just don't think is a bag that would be appropriate for any other occasion. The next bag on our list is actually a new take on a belt bag, and a take that personally I don't think I have ever seen before because this belt bag is a lot more structured than most belt bags out there, and it actually reminds me of a bag that was completely different from this bag, which Hermes did, I mean, at this point probably over a decade ago, but it was called the Major bag, I believe. It was this really cute bucket bag that always reminded me of a smiley face because it had two cutouts, I think two larger holes on the top part of the bag, and then it had a little tiny hole in the middle, and it always reminded me of a little cartoon face. And I don't know why, but this bag kind of reminds me of that, even though it doesn't actually have the cutouts, but it has that large cul-de-sac little detail on the corner. You do have a large zip. You know why this reminds me of that? Because it kind of looks like a smile. I don't know if it's just me and I'm just imagining it, but this kind of reminds me of a big mouth that is smiling. Let me know if you see it, but I think it is a really cool design. I mean, I would definitely not wear this as a belt bag, but I don't have any issues reappropriating belt bags as crossbody bags, which is exactly what I have been doing, and that's exactly how I would style this particular bag too. I mean, it's definitely an interesting one. I don't think that it's going to be the hottest piece of the season, but if you're looking for a large belt bag, kind of similar to the banana bag, that's kind of how I would imagine this bag being styled. This is definitely one that I would suggest you speak to your local boutique about. And speaking of novelty items, there's another interesting, I want to call it a bag here, but I'm not exactly sure if this is a bag or if this is a leather coat that comes with a strap inside. So if you get too hot, you can actually take off your coat, but you don't have to put it over your shoulders, you don't have to put it on your arm, but you can actually use the strap that is attached to the lining of the jacket, so you can carry it almost as a bag. Or it could also be a two-in-one, so it could be a jacket that you can turn into a tote bag. Either way, I think it's a really cool idea. I don't think that it's going to make it into mass production. We have seen similar bags like this from Hermes, made of silk and the different fun materials that they release one or two of, if that, and that's kind of going to be the end of it. So I'm not exactly sure what this is going to be, but I'm really excited to see what this turns into. And by the way, please feel free to let me know your thoughts in the comment section if you think I'm wrong, if there's anything that you have to add, if you have ever seen something similar to these that you could compare these to. Please let us know in the comment section, because I am not by any means telling you what to know about these bags, just purely sharing with you my first impressions seeing them. But let's see if there are any other bags. How could I forget? I almost forgot about this last bag that was shown on the runway, which I'm just going to say it, I'm not a fan of. And I'm not a fan purely because of the feathers. I'm not a fan of the overall shape either. But there is a new Kelly shape being introduced, which to me, this new Kelly bag is almost as if the Kelly to go, the Kelly cut, and the Kelly pochette had a baby, because of the proportions, because of the shape, because of the dimension and the sizing of the bag. This is a new Kelly clutch bag that is being introduced for the season that comes with a removable thin leather strap, so you can either carry it as if it was carried on the runway, you could carry it as a little shoulder bag similar to the Prada nylon bag, or you could completely remove the strap and use it as a clutch bag on its own. But personally, because the bag is so thin and narrow, it is not my favorite. When it comes to Kelly bags, I just feel like, again, this is going to be one of those bags that is trying to be too many things. It's just simply not my favorite. I mean, obviously I understand that I am probably not in love with this bag because of the feathers, and I have no doubt that it's also going to be available without any feathers on it. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if they never actually launched these feather covered bags, if these were just novelty items that were shown on the runway and they only released these bags without the feather detail. I don't think anyone would be complaining about that. But feathers or no feathers, at the end of the day, I am just not the biggest fan of the proportions of this bag. And even when it launches without feathers, I just don't think it's going to be for me. But having a closer look at it now and just scrolling through the pictures, you know what this actually reminds me of? Yes, it is kind of the blend of the Kelly wallet, the Kelly cut, and the Kelly pochette. But even more than that, I think what was the original inspiration for this bag was one of the original Kelly cuts, which is no longer in production. But at one point, Hermes did have a Kelly cut, which was much larger than the current Kelly cut that is in production. That, I think, is what was the original inspiration for this bag. And I might be completely off, but that's the most comparable thing that I could think of when it comes to previous Hermes bags. And these are, I think, all the bags that were shown on the runway. I was thinking about talking about some of the ready-to-wear pieces, but honestly, it's all things that Hermes have done before, and 90% of these are probably going to be cut and won't make it into production, so there is really no point talking about them. The shoes, I'm not a fan of. I think that they were kind of ridiculous, but there were quite a few really interesting costume jewelry pieces. There were some beautiful bracelets and actually earrings that had some leather pieces woven through a metal base that I really liked. But that's pretty much it. I mean, this runway show, it was fine. It just wasn't anything unexpected, wasn't anything revolutionary, nothing that we haven't seen from Hermes before. But the bags, I mean, some of them are interesting. Anything to go crazy for? Not necessarily, but I think I'm going to leave this video at this. And then the next video you will see from me is going to be my thoughts on some of the pieces that were shown during the press event. So mainly Birkins and Kellys that are coming for Spring Summer 23. So if you'd like to see that video from me, don't forget to subscribe down below. And if you haven't done so yet, make sure to give this video a thumbs up. But for now, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you being here, and I hope to see you back here in my next video really, really soon.